I've been practicing medicine for over 25 years, and I've seen it. The world is hurting, people are sick, and even with our greatest scientific discoveries and technological breakthroughs, trends in health are not getting better. We weren't designed for this. This world as we know it, it's not our home. But there is a remedy. Our Creator designed us to be resilient creatures, and He's given us clues in the scriptures that have dramatic implication for our lives today. Let's talk about biblical prescriptions. Let's take a serious look at living as God intended. Are you ready? Let's get well, and let's go home.
Welcome to the Biblical Prescriptions for Life podcast. I'm your host, Nick Evanson, here with Dr. James Marcum, author of the 7-week Bible study, Biblical Prescriptions for Life. On today's program, we're going to talk a little bit more about last week's discussion of medications, the risks, and the benefits. And we're also going to answer a listener's question that they submitted at biblicalprescriptions.com/podcast. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to visit and submit them at the website. Dr. Marcum, welcome back to the podcast, and thanks so much for all of the insights that you shared with us last week when we were talking about cardiology and the risks of medications.
I haven't talked about medicines and the dangers in a long time, but it's really something I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about it because it's something that is a problem that we're sort of sweeping under the rug. No one wants to talk about it. It's not popular to say this medicine has risk and benefits. And it's also when people, when they hear about it and they know that there's things that they can do so they don't have to take the risk, that puts personal responsibility on them. So if they do have a problem, it's a lot of it's on them. It's a big issue.
Well, we're going to get more into that discussion in just a moment. But first, I want to address a question that Rob submitted from the website. And this is about diabetes. And he was diagnosed a year ago. And he doesn't specify if it's type 1 or type 2. But his question is, when will a diabetic put back on the pounds that they have lost? What meats do you recommend? I have good blood sugar numbers under 100 fasting.
Okay. As far as, I assume that he has type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a disease that usually we give to ourselves because we have too much fat in our diet and too much animal protein in our diet. And this clog up our receptors and damage our bodies, basically. So basically, in short, the insulin that's made is not enough. It can't get glucose into the cell because of too much fat, and these receptors are damaged. And there's a complete discussion of type 2 diabetes in our podcast number.
Episode number 9, podcast number 9.
So I'd refer him to that. But what happens is sometimes the person doesn't gain weight because they're just not getting nutrition in the cells. So the first thing actually to gain weight is see if you can reverse the process itself. So actually you want to get rid of processed fats, processed foods, and he asks about meat. You want to eliminate as much meat as you can, preferably all meat.
Now, why is that?
Well, meat is made of 30 to 40% fat, which is we don't need, clogs up the receptors. It's also made up of a lot of animal proteins, which stimulate a substance called insulin-like growth factor, which causes even more problems. So really what a type 2 diabetic wants is lots of plant-based carbohydrates. So just that in itself, if the receptors are unblocked, you can get more energy into the cells, so that in itself might stabilize weight. Another thing that diabetics do is because they can't get glucose into the cell, they break down other things, especially muscles, okay? So in time, if you can get the other food into you, the other source of energy into the cells, glucose, then all of a sudden you don't break down as much muscle. You might be able to add a little bit more protein in your diet, but actually it's good to lose the weight if it's in fat. You know, and most of us lose fat too. That's actually good. The protein, you can try to build that back up once you stabilize diabetes with a little bit more protein in your diet from a plant-based protein, which would be nuts, beans, things of that nature, have pretty good protein content. You don't need a lot of protein in your diet. So I want to also refer him to episode number 9. Mm-hmm. Another good site to learn about nutrition is pcrm.org. That's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine.org. And another good site is McDougall BPFL.com. And these give you actually eating plans, all sorts of things you can look into. And Rob's on the right path because he's wanting to learn. And that's where it all starts. That's the first step, wanting to learn, wanting to do better. But I would try to minimize or eliminate meat in the diet as much as you can in the treatment of type 2 diabetes.
So nutrient composition is really the key for type 2.
It is. And I know from personal story, you know, I have diabetes and I'm able to control it with diet and exercise. Now I eat a pretty strict diet.
Yeah, you've gone pretty hardcore with your nutrition. Huh?
But you can't. But you know, even before I had this, you know, we have it runs in our family, so we don't make as much insulin, so we can't afford to jam up our receptors with fat. Even though I was eating a vegan vegetarian diet before, I was eating too much processed food, which too much fat in it.
Okay.
And that clogged up it. So I had some of the same problems that he did. Lost some weight, lost muscle mass. And this is what does it. This is what worked. Now, you might not ever have super large muscles, but you know, being lean and mean isn't a bad plan. It's better than being a diabetic and not getting energy into your cells and feeling bad and having the damage that diabetes has on the nervous system, the cardiovascular system, the kidneys, everything. So I think Rob's on to a good, but those are some places that he might go that will help him.
Now, I know the answer to this because we've talked and I've had lunch with you a number of times, but why don't you tell folks, how did you eat when you found out that it was diabetes? What did you do? Well,
I eliminated processed foods basically from my existence.
Yeah, and you had a pretty regular meal, right? Every day?
And breakfast would look like oatmeal with nuts, berries, and ground flax. That would be it, one bowl. Lunch would be a big salad because, you know, a pound of salad has about 100 calories in it. So you can get lots of salad, very little.
Big bowl,
with some type of covering that has no fats. I chose different vinaigrettes and peppers. That would be lunch. And dinner would be some type of bean. Different types of bean, brown beans, pinto beans, black beans with maybe a taco or maybe some brown rice or maybe mixed with some other vegetables or mixed with a potato. And that was that, to go with regular exercise.
Yeah.
And I was very, very strict on that for at least 3 months. And I took my hemoglobin A1C down dramatically. All my blood parameters improved. It kept me from having to need a medication. So that was the way I chose to do it. Now, as I've done it for a while, I could add a few more calories, but you know, you want to be careful because you don't want to slip back into having the same metabolic problems.
Right.
And when you have one metabolic problem, it affects everything. You know, your triglycerides go up, so it raises your blood, you know, raises all sorts of other issues in the body. So doing this is going to help the entire body, but you've got to understand that this is important. If you don't do this, your body's going to wear out.
Yeah.
So I didn't want that. I had the knowledge to do it, but I got the power from God. I said, God, I need help. I can't do this on my own. Please help me to make these changes. And it took me about a month to get rid of that processed food desire. And now I probably could eat some processed food and keep a lid on it. But before, it's bad. I would go to a Mexican restaurant and the lady I'd order the healthiest burrito and she'd come and say, would you want some chips? And I go, I'll take some chips and I'll dip them. And then I'd eat my burrito and she said, would you like some more chips?
Yeah.
And then we'd eat my meals, be talking, be all full. Would you like some more chips? So you could be a chipaholic.
Right.
And then things on the bread, I'd be putting things like, you know, processed stuff on the breads and have a cookie here, a cookie there. Oh, a granola bar is good. You know, just too much processed foods.
Yeah.
And before I got it with my metabolism and my genetics, I couldn't do it. And I was going to get into problems if I did it long term.
But after a month, you got pretty normalized with that nutrition.
Pretty normalized within a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do it, but it takes some discipline and it takes having the knowledge to do it. Unfortunately, some doctors say, here, just take a pill. Here, just take a pill. Well, the pill doesn't fix the underlying problem, especially in type 2 diabetes. And if you take pills long enough and your pancreas keeps making insulin, sooner or later your pancreas runs out of insulin, then you're stuck.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. You know, I didn't want my pancreas to run out of insulin. Then I have to take the shots because insulin is a growth factor. You know, athletes take insulin to get big and strong, but it also grows other things that you might not want to grow in your body, like cancers, things like that. So insulin's not, and it causes you to eat more. So people on insulin tend to put on weight. They get heavy. It's like a steroid on the body. You know how you get all sort of muscle and have that steroid look.
Yeah, and you mentioned that this was something passed on genetically to you. It runs in your family, and so
we run low to begin with.
If you fail to take care of it yourself, you're going to pass this on to your kids in some manner, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's very important that we not only let them understand that, but let them understand the lifestyle habits that we have to keep from succumbing to this type of problem.
Yeah. Yeah, Rob, hopefully that sheds some light on the questions you have. And if not, go back to podcast number 9, and you can have the full discussion on type 2 diabetes right there. So let's talk a little bit more, Dr. Marcum.
Yes.
Last week we were talking about your book, Medicines That Kill, and we were talking about some medications, specifically some cardiology common medications. And what are some of the other ones that people need to hear about?
I wanted to go through what I says the top 10 dangerous classes of medicines. And I do this because it's a problem. More people are dying from medications, errors, too much, overdosing, inappropriate. Drug companies make them wrong. Adverse drug reactions, anaphylactic reactions. Many different ways people are actually dying from medications. So the best way to protect yourself from a medication is to not need it, to make changes so you don't need it in the first place.
Prevention.
If you can't do that, have a lot of knowledge and know how to take them correctly, ask the right questions. But I made a list of the top 10 dangerous medications that kill people in my that I've seen in my practice.
Well,
you're never going to see this written anywhere else because 17% of medical care costs are on pharmaceuticals. It's a billion dollar industry. So let's go over the top ones. The number one top 10 dangerous classes, and I didn't say it kills, but dangerous, is opioid painkillers.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned in a blog recently about an opioid that just got taken off the market. That's in this class, huh?
Yes. These are addictive medications that are used for pain. They don't fix the cause of pain. They just treat pain. Okay, so they don't fix the cause of pain.
Just treating a symptom there.
Right. If you're
serious symptoms for sure.
Right, yeah. So if you start banging your head on the wall, Nick, your head's going to start hurting after a while.
Yeah.
Well, I can give you pain medicine that will help the head not to hurt as you bang it against the wall. But that's not going to take away the cause of the pain.
Right.
So that's important to me, the opioids. But different names, Lortab, OxyContin, Vicodin's now off the market. But what they do is they depress respirations, breathing. They can depress respirations. They slow down the bowels. You're likely to get bowel obstruction. They can slow down the heart rate. They slow down lots of processes in the body. They slow down the way you think. But the big thing, they're addicting. So you get dependent on it. So more and more are needed. And you have these pleasure receptors that respond to that. So some people get addicted to this very easily. They might have pain for a while, but then their pain goes away, but their addiction to the medicine doesn't.
Right.
The body cries out, I need more, I need more. And if you think of addictions in general, some of the things that people get addicted to are things that bring on pleasure. You make these pleasurable chemicals like dopamine, they go up in the body and your body craves that and wants more and more. So these are addictive medicines and I don't understand it because I've never been on it, but people say they're on it, that's all they can think about. That's all they want is give me another hit, give me this. And the dangerous thing now is the opioid painkillers killed a lot of people overdosing it. They mix and match with alcohol and other medications. And what's happened now we're taking them off the market, but a new opioid painkiller is coming on, and that's heroin. And I just read an article in Virginia about it killing over 150 people recently of this overdosing. And the number one drug expenditure on the ambulances is Narcan, which is a medicine used to reverse the opioids.
Okay.
So it's a major problem now. As our society gets sicker and we have pain from whatever, mental pain, physical pain, we start, let me just take something. It's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt me that much. Let me just have a little bit.
Yeah.
But then they take a little bit and they get addicted and a little bit more and more. And before long, that they have to have it. And they'll do anything to get it. They'll steal for it. They'll write prescriptions for it. they'll do whatever they can to get it. Now, not all people are like this, but opioid painkillers can be a dangerous class for even people that are smart. They can get addicted to it. It's a big problem.
So let's say that someone starts to recognize that they are becoming addicted, and what do they do? What's the first step?
See your doctor. See if there's alternatives causes to the pain. Let's solve the pain problem and gradually taper yourself off those dangerous medications.
Yeah.
Some people, no matter what addiction you have, if you stop stone cold, you can have withdrawal. I've seen that in alcoholics, in people on pain medicines, people addicted to gambling, people addicted to pornography, any type of addiction. When you stop it suddenly, because those pain receptors, those dopamine receptors that are getting the pleasure are all, where do I get my pleasure from?
Yeah.
And it turns on another set of chemistry that you're not sometimes prepared to handle. So you have to have a really good support group, really good medical care when you come off that type of medicine. So that's at the highest part of my list of being dangerous, opioids.
Yeah. What's the second most dangerous
Well,
class?
the second one is chemotherapy. Have you heard of chemotherapy?
Sure. Cancer.
These
Cancer drugs.
medications are supposed to kill cancer cells, but they also kill good cells too.
Right.
So whether or not to take chemotherapy comes about the risk versus the benefits. And it kills white cells, which make you more prone to infections. It can kill the red blood cell line, which makes you, turns off the red blood cells. It can knock off platelets. It can cause bleeding more likely, but it can also damage other organs. Chemo can damage your heart. Certain chemo can damage different parts of the body as well. So chemotherapy, it's very powerful. It can kill cancer, but it can also kill good cells as you. So I put chemotherapy in that. And if you have to take chemotherapy, you have to know, what to take it with, how to be careful with it. You have to make sure all the organs can take it. And the doctors are good about screening. And then you have to say, well, what's the risk and benefits of it? I read recently an article that said 50% of cancer now is preventable. 50% just by lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
50%. Just stopping smoking and getting your body weight normal, that can stop a lot of cancers. Screening, that can stop a lot of cancers too. You want to do things early in life to prevent even having the discussion of whether you have chemo. And a lot of times the doctors will say, well, I think if you take this chemo, we might get another 1 or 2 months. Because remember, chemo is pretty much for metastatic disease. And if disease is spread throughout the body, you have to have a real honest discussion with your doctors whether the risk is worth the benefits. And if you start having these dangerous, life-threatening complications, whether you should continue. So that's number 2.
Yeah. One comment, I hear a lot about different 5Ks that raise money for cancer.
Yeah.
And that's great. I think there's an important thing to do research to help, find cures for cancer and whatnot.
I agree.
However, sometimes I have a hard time because I think, folks, you're going and raising money for cancer, but just make one lifestyle change for yourself in addition to doing this 5K for cancer to raise money for it. Just do a little bit of prevention as well as helping with the research. I think it would go so far for our country if we
I do too. And if we can lower them with lifestyle 50%, just stopping smoking.
Yeah.
I'm just getting fat out of the body. We know that fat stimulates cells hold on to estrogen, that stimulates cancer growth. So there's just so many ways that we can do it. But, we don't talk enough about those.
Yeah.
So that's why we're talking about medicines today, about the different classes, just to give people an education of which ones to be careful for, the questions to ask, the things that they might do now so they don't need to be on them in the future.
Right. Yeah.
So don't get cancer.
Yeah.
If you have pain, find out where the pain is. Try to treat the cause and not treat the symptoms. Therefore, you might not have to take risk if you don't have to.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. The third one we talked about a little bit last is blood thinners. Blood thinners, because we used to have ones out there called thrombolytics. They were even more powerful blood thinners. They're very potent. A little bleeding can be fatal bleeding when you're on some of these thrombolytics or strong blood thinners. So anytime a person's on blood thinners, they have to make sure the risk is worth the benefits. Also, they have to make sure they're very, very careful. And at the first sign of bleeding, let's say your bowel movement changes colors. That could be a sign of bleeding. Let's say you're older and you start to fall and do dangerous things. Well, you have to be very careful. You have to let your doctor know, I'm falling down, I'm bruising a lot. So at that point, the benefit of the blood thinner might not be worth the risk.
Right.
In some people that had different types of bleeding, stomach bleeding, brain bleeding, whatever, it's not safe to give any blood thinners to. So that's another class of medications that can cause problems if inappropriate. What are some of the problems I've seen? Well, a person can be on a powerful blood thinner and get in a car accident, and sometimes the bleeding cannot be stopped. They bonk their head, and a little bleeding that normally could be stopped becomes fatal bleeding. Okay, so you really want to understand whether the risk is worth the benefits. And more than that, once you're on these blood thinners, know the medicines that make the blood thinners more potent, that tend to activate them even more. And it can go this way. Some medicines deactivate it, some activate it. It's very important to know these things. A lot of people said, oh, I didn't know that if I took an antibiotic, my blood would get more thin. Oh, I didn't know that this medicine and this medicine are both blood thinners.
Right. Yeah.
I saw a person on 3 blood thinners once, and they didn't even know, the other 2 were even affecting their blood.
Yeah.
So all these things play a role in blood thinning. And also, people can thin out their blood by simple things like drinking water. That can thin the blood to some degree. So some things there's people can do that will thin their blood, and they don't need to take as powerful blood thinners. Some people can figure out what the cause of the clot was in the beginning and get rid of that so they don't have to take it. But if you do have to take it, if the benefits are worth the risk, make sure the risks are minimized by understanding everything you can. Communicate with your doctor about the blood thinners. So that one's number 3 on my list of dangerous medicines. Number 4 is one that I use quite a bit. It's called anti-arrhythmics. These are rhythm medicines. Some of the names of them are amiodarone, sotalol, dofetilide, mexiletine, beta blockers. These help stabilize abnormal fast heart rhythms. But they also can lower blood pressure, and they can cause dangerous other rhythms because they change the way the cells use different types of ion pathways. So they can actually become what we call pro-arrhythmic, or they can cause it. They can also slow the heart, make the heart go too slow, depending on the metabolism. So I've seen these medications called dangerous fast rhythms and dangerous slow rhythms if they're not monitored and taken correctly. So even though the medicines are taken, sometimes they can be dangerous, especially as we get older. The medicines seem to have a more potent effect. The kidneys don't work as well. The liver doesn't work as well. Sometimes we don't drink enough water. Many patients are on numerous medications, which also affect it. So frequently I've seen 3 or 4 people that are on medicines that slow their heart rate down. Their kidneys have a problem for whatever, dehydration. Then all of a sudden their heart rate used to be 50, now it's 20. Their blood pressure goes down, they fall down, they hurt themselves, they pass away. It happens, unfortunately. So that's one of the side effects. I put that down as my number 4 cause of dangerous medicines. Want to hear number 5?
Yeah. I was just going to ask, what's...
Steroids.
Now, what kind of steroids are we talking about?
Well, all types of steroids. There's steroids that bodybuilders are taking. Those are dangerous. The anabolic steroids. Any patient that's on a steroid, that can be dangerous too. And there's different names of steroids. And I don't usually mean short-term medicines. On all these, I don't usually mean short-term. I mean prolonged use, day in, day out, year in, year out. Chronic use of these medicines. That's where the danger and risk go up.
So a few times I've had sinus infections and I've gotten steroids for that. That kind of thing is generally not an issue.
No, but I'm talking about day in, day out.
Yeah.
But over a long time, they can cause fluid retention. Diabetes, make your blood sugar go up. But the big one is they weaken your immune system, so you're more prone to infections.
Yeah.
When this happens, you get weaker bones. You get more osteoporosis. Your bones break more. You have increased weight, which damages your joints. You can have you're more prone to bleeding in the intestinal tracts. The wounds, if you're having surgery, if you're on steroids, the wounds just don't heal as well. You can have adrenal problems. Your adrenal glands, which normally make steroids, get turned down when you're on chronic steroids.
Yeah, because you're already taking so much that it doesn't create a normal amount.
We call that adrenal insufficiency. So if you've already been on chronic steroids, then you have to take more. So are steroids needed? Yeah, sometimes steroids are needed, but you want to be careful if you're on it long term. A lot of people are on it for inflammation. Some people take it for other reasons, but the best thing is to try to be on it for short term, not long term. The most common place I see steroids long-term is in severe arthritis. Because you have so much inflammation. The pain is so damaging. And sometimes, you don't like to have the pain, but pain is risky itself. And sometimes you have to be on a low-dose steroid and monitor it carefully, because a low-dose steroid might be safer than a low-dose narcotic for the pain.
Right.
So pain is not good either. Sometimes steroids are used to decrease inflammation long-term. Let's say you have inflammation in the brain. There's nothing more that can do. Well, then in that case, the side effects are probably worth it, but it needs to be monitored very closely. So that is a dangerous class of medicines that people need to know a lot about if they're on it, and hopefully they don't have to be on it the rest of your life. I've taken it a few times for poison ivy because it helps the inflammation. Some people, like your sinus, you take it for short term, that's usually not a big deal. I'm talking day in, day out, year in, year out for different types of medical conditions. And in that case, you have to balance the risks, benefits. Is there anything else I can do so I don't have to take these giant risks? I've had some people that have chronic inflammation that just change their diets and their inflammation goes down.
I was going to say, we have some biblical prescriptions, 60-second videos where you've talked about that kind of thing, where you talk about nutrition can be used as a biblical prescription rather than medications. Where
they can change inflammation in the body, but just maybe getting rid of certain foods in the diet which trigger inflammation. We know animal-based products trigger inflammation in the body. We know that plants decrease inflammation. There are certain things like ginger and turmeric and things of that nature that might be able to help joints out, so you don't need to take a steroid. You might do regular exercise or physical therapy that can move that joint so it's not as inflamed from sitting hour in and hour out. So steroids are another medicine that if you're on it, know everything you can about it.
Now, I know I've heard a common phrase from some athletes that will say, if the engine's burning hot enough, it doesn't matter what you fuel it with. And their thing is they think they can eat whatever they want because they're exercising hard every day. So their body will just metabolize it and they won't have any negative effects from eating a lot of meats or rich diets or whatever. Is that the case? It sounds like it's not.
No, it's really not, Nick. I mean, and like I said, in most people, if you eat the right nutrient composition, that's the key. But if you eat the wrong nutrient composition, not only does the body not work as good, things are stored and it causes things to malfunction. So that's not necessarily true. Younger in life, things you can burn off a lot of things, but I have people that are lean marathon runners that eat the wrong type of food and are very sick under the skin. Even though they might not be fat, their cells don't have what they need. They still have inflammation in their body. They still have, and it's more complicated, but it gets down to a couple things. Is when you have the wrong nutrient composition, there's 1 trillion bacteria in the bowel that are doing things. Okay, it's going to mess those up. Okay, and those are key to your brain health and what gets in inflammation and long-term DNA. So you eat the wrong things, and the DNA can be damaged. When the DNA gets damaged, you have mutations younger. So all of this process causes the body basically to age quicker. So let's say you're eating the wrong foods, even though you look good, you're thinking you're burning off. Well, normally if a part would get aged at age 50, or 60, that part might wear up many years because you've damaged your DNA with your diet. So if we sort of go against the way we were designed to be, it hurts on many levels that we might not be able to see, but it ages us quicker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Like if you're genetically going to lose your hearing at age 70 and you hear a lot of loud noises that you weren't hear, it might get bad at age 50. The same thing. If you eat food that you weren't designed to eat and it causes defects, for instance, our body loves antioxidants. It helps repair DNA. Oxidants damage DNA. Okay, so if you have oxidants in there that actually damages DNA, we know that these foods that people think they're burning off actually is damaging DNA and causing mutations at some level, even though they can't see it now. It might age it, so you might have a disease earlier in life based on your genetic predisposition. Nick, I just got a call. Did you call me on the hotline?
I didn't.
No, I think that's probably someone calling in wanting to ask a question. And let me see who it is. Yes, this is a question.
you got a question there. Is
Yes.
that from a patient or
No,
where's that coming
this
from?
is a question from my son, Jake.
Oh,
Okay.
what's Jake asking?
And Jake is asking, Dad, I wish you were here at the baseball game with me. He's watching a guy hit the ball, and he just sent me a picture here. Let me show it to everybody here. I will see if I can show it to everybody.
Is it a high school ball game or?
Now this is our local.
Oh, the Lookouts.
Called the Lookouts, and he wanted to show me the sunset and this baseball picture that's just being shot.
Pretty nice.
And he wished I was here, but he's with his girlfriend, so I don't think he really wanted me to come.
Maybe he wanted to, have some time with you, hanging out with his lady friend.
Yeah, but
What a cool kid.
But now the way people are communicating, Nick, is they communicate with these cell phones, and that's why I keep it here because if there's an emergency. I have to break through because remember we talked about families.
That's right.
Families
Gotta take care of the
important.
kids.
Right.
That's right.
So what were we talking about?
We just finished talking about, I think, number 6 on your list.
Yeah.
Which was, what was the
We
class
did
of
5 with steroids. And
Steroids,
these are
that's
dangerous medicines that we have to pay attention to. Number 6 is diuretics.
Okay.
You heard of
that's
diuretics?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Those are medicines that take fluid, specifically salt. Take salt out of your body, fluid with it. The reason these can be dangerous is they can also take out, they can dehydrate you, which they can affect the kidney function. Mm-hmm. They can take out minerals like magnesium and potassium, which the body needs. You lose those, you can have dangerous rhythm problems. Mm-hmm. When you get dehydrated, your other organs get fatigued. Every cell in the body needs water. When you don't have enough water, all the cells malfunction.
Yeah.
So diuretics are needed in some case, but if they're not needed, they can be dangerous. So if you're on a diuretic, you have to make sure you really need it. A lot of people are on it just because they have bad veins in the legs. Mm-hmm. Well, just walking every hour, cutting back the salt in processed foods, elevating the leg stocking can sometimes obviate the need to take a diuretic. Okay. Then if you are taking it, you want to make sure you hydrate yourself. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure you have your electrolytes checked every so often so they're not getting bonked out.
Right.
I've seen several, usually older people, Nick, they go and for instance, they go to a nursing home and they get sick and they're not eating or drinking. Yet every day, give me the diuretic. Every day, give me the diuretic. So literally they turn from a grape to a raisin. They go into renal failure. They go to the hospital. They have no blood pressure. Their heart's going faster and renal failure. Someone says, oh, mama died because she was in renal failure. Her kidneys just gave out and she died.
Yeah.
Well, she was dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
She was dehydrated. She just got too much diuretic over time. No one gave her any fluids and it just took all the fluid out of her.
Yeah.
So, or a low potassium, and then a fatal heart rhythm happens, So these medicines can be very helpful in certain situations, but if they're given without the proper watch guard and knowledge, they can also be dangerous. So I put diuretics in one of my dangerous classes of medications because of that.
So that's diuretics, number 6. Tell us about number 7.
Okay. I have non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs.
What are those used for?
Motrin, naproxen. Those are primarily used for inflammation in the body. There used to be ones out called Celebrex, Vioxx. They took them off the market because they caused more heart attacks.
Oh.
So all of them have increased the risk of heart disease, but they also cause more bleeding in the body. So if you can treat inflammation, now they're probably safer in treating inflammation than steroids. Okay, but long term, I don't mean a short term run of Epidrin.
Right. Yeah.
I mean day in, day out, day in, day out. That's where the risks go up. So if you can find ways to minimize that risk, that's better. If you have to take it, then understand that you have a higher risk of bleeding, you're higher risk of heart disease, so you want to lower the risk. Let's say you have a little bit of risk of NSAIDs. Well, you want to lower your risk of heart disease every other way if you have to keep taking it.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have high cholesterol, you want to exercise, you want to do everything you can. So if you do have one risk, you don't pile the risk on each other. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are the majority of NSAIDs over the counter or prescription? I imagine
both.
Some of both, right?
Yeah, you can get NSAIDs over the counter now. Mm-hmm. You can get it a prescription. It's very easy access, and that's why it's so dangerous because people are at home. Oh, I can take as many goody powders as I want.
Right.
I can take as many. What's the ones? Excedrin. Anything that says non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. Ecotrin. Those type of medicines. Those all have. They call them NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. And the two most popular one was Vioxx and Celebrex. Those were potent, but they had to take them off the market because it increased the chance of having a fatal heart attack.
Yeah.
So
that's
and
a
also
serious side
it
effect.
causes fluid retention, causes bleeding, but usually it's long-term, day in, day out.
Right.
People would rather take these dangerous medicines like non-steroidals instead of maybe eat better or exercise or physical therapy or some other mode to help lower inflammation. And sometimes people don't even know they have options.
Yeah.
You know, I have this, take this. Oh, here, take this. And they're on it for years and years before someone finally says, oh, did you do this? Well, my doctor said if I would just do this, this, and this, my inflammation might get better.
Yeah.
Sometimes inflammation gets better just by merely resting apart.
It's our limited beliefs that lifestyle can actually make a difference. We think there's all this magic in the tiny little pill. And sure, that can make us feel good, but it doesn't get to the cause and really help us in the best way possible.
And that's sort of the message behind this book, Medicines That Kill, Nick, is that medicines do have risk. They don't really fix problems. They treat symptoms. And medicines are used for short term till you can get over the hump and treat the cause if possible.
Yeah.
Now, there's some conditions, usually genetic conditions, that you're stuck with. And that way, then you have to take the risk of medicines. And if the risk is worth the benefits, you want to learn everything you can about it to minimize your risk.
Right.
Knowing how to take it. We got a couple more that are dangerous. We talked about the diabetes medicines before. They can make the blood sugar go too low. They don't fix the problem. You can make it go too low. They can damage other systems too. There's one called metformin that can cause a dangerous liver condition called acidosis. So there's all these medicines have side effects. I have antidepressants, especially some of them out there can actually raise the chance of you wanting to kill yourself.
Yeah, that seems a little counterintuitive
right.
there.
And some of the anti-anxiety medicines are addictive. You get addicted to it. It takes more and more. Oh, I have to have my Xanax. I have to have my Librium. I have to have it. And it's all about risk and benefits. But again, many times people don't need them. They get addicted to them. They're on it year in and year out. Then they suffer from these chronic complications. Then another one that I wrote down on my list of dangerous medications is attention deficit disorder medications. Some of them out there might be Ritalin and Adderall. These are methamphetamines. Okay, that's what they are. They're methamphetamines. They stimulate the brain to do funny things.
Right.
So these medicines all have risk. I saw a person here that was having a dangerous heart rhythm from taking Inderol. They were taking Inderol because they had attention deficit disorder, or that was their diagnosis. So I'm not saying people should never, ever be on these medicines.
Right.
But let's have a game plan. What are you going to do? Take it when you're 30, when you're 40? Is there any other way you can get off these medicines? Is there any alternatives? And if you do have to take it, is the risk worth the benefits? And what are the things I can do to lower my risk? And that's why I wrote this book, Medicines That Kill. Gives people sort of an overview of medicines, but I just want everyone out there to be smart, ask questions. Remember, you are your own best doctor working with the ultimate physician and learning about these things and how you can care for your body.
Yeah. So Medicines That Kill, it's available on our bookstore at biblicalprescriptions.com. Click on the store there. And if you have any comments, you can submit them at biblicalprescriptions.com/podcast. And Dr. Marcum, any closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to thank everyone for listening. And remember, these are opinions. Opinions are different than convictions. Okay. Opinions are what people arrive at based on the current state of knowledge. So opinions can change over time. Okay, so if I learn more, I will bring more. These are my opinions. You have to have your own opinions. Now, you know the difference between an opinion and a conviction, Nick?
What's that?
Conviction is something you're willing to die for.
Yeah.
And that's a conviction. An opinion, I don't know about that, And opinions can change over time. Convictions usually don't. You're convicted of it, you're going to do that. So these are opinions. Opinions change. My opinions on subjects have changed over the years too, based on my current knowledge and learning. And that's why I'm always praying. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to go to the real source of truth. And I asked God, I said, God, show me something that's new. And this last weekend, I had time to read a book about origins. I'm always very interested in origins, where we came from and all the theories out there, because you have to know in your heart what you believe.
Right.
I think we talked about this before. I spent a lot of time studying the other theories, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, all these other things. The same with medications. If this made sense to you, let us hear from you. If you want to learn more, I would recommend this book, but just ask questions, find out truth for yourself.
Yeah. One final question. Medicines that kill, this is not about biblical prescriptions specifically, but your philosophy of medicine certainly runs true in both of them. How do they fit together?
Well, this book, Medicines That Kill, let people know that medicines are not the answer. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get into great detail about what the answer is, but it does mention that the true answer is in that relationship we have with Christ. That's the answer to almost every problem we have. When we come together with Christ, Nick, that gives us healing. Mm-hmm. And that healing gives us access to our eternal Creator that can open the doors of truth to us. Not that we can ever understand God, but we can start moving in that direction. So even if something, let's say we have a catastrophic illness, we don't need to be afraid because we know where we're going. We know where we're heading. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to be perfect. We learn things along the way. It's not so much what we know. It's not so much what we do. It's who we know, mm-hmm. and how who we know changes our lives in the direction we're going. And that's the real message behind Medicines That Kill. It says Medicines That Kill on the front, but at the end of the book, it also says, well, what is the way to life? Life long term. Yeah. And that's sort of the real hidden message in that book, and also the biblical prescriptions for life.
Yeah.
It lets people know that healing is good on the short term, but there's something more that we have to open our eyes to that can help us in the short term as well.
Yeah. And in biblical prescriptions for life, there's a lot of lifestyle changes discussed there that are from the scriptures that might reduce one's need for medications as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's why when people start applying biblical prescriptions, sometimes they can get off prescription medicines. Sometimes they can change their bodies. For sure, they can change their brains, and they can just have a peace about them, which helps in some way.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Marcum, thanks for taking us through the top 10 dangerous classes of medications. And I'm going to go through and review that next time I get written a prescription, just to make sure it's absolutely necessary before I take it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us again. I'm Nick Evanson with Heartwise Ministries for Dr. James Marcum on the Biblical Prescriptions for Life podcast. Once again, give us some feedback on your thoughts of the podcast at biblicalprescriptions.com/podcast, and you can give us your health questions there, and we'll answer them on a future episode. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week about getting well and going home.